2015 and 2016, years etched in South African history. University students demanded free education. As a result, many ended up in the criminal justice system.
I've secured the criminal record due to fighting for just cause, It was not out of, deliberate crime.
If I'm found guilty, they say there won't be any option of a fine. I'll serve less than 3 years.
There has been a great impact because now I'm not studying due to funding, and last year I couldn't even write my exams in time because on the same day I had exams, I had to appear in court.
When Special Assignment visited some of these activists in 2018, they were paying a heavy price. In this episode, we go back to them and find out what has since transpired. One Saturday morning in 2018, we visited the Cekeshes. The family was up early in anticipation of their visit to Leoko prison in the north of Johannesburg, where their then 24-year-old son Kanya had served a few months of his 5-year jail term.
I miss the way he laughs. I miss I miss having chats with him.
In 2016, Kanya was a first-year student at a private college in Braamfontein, where he was studying media law.
And then the fees must fall came up towards the end of that year, and I think he felt strongly to be a part of it as well, even though he wasn't studying at FET. I think especially. Yeah, I think especially considering the fact that the previous year he wanted to be part of UJ OVETS and it just didn't work out. And at the time, as the parents, we also could not afford to pay VETS fees or UJ fees at the time. So I think when the fees must fall started, it triggered something in him, and he got involved.
On the 25th of October 2016, a police car was burnt in Braamfontein. The following day, police arrived with a handcuffed Kanya at his home.
According to them, they were saying they want his clothes that he was wearing the previous day because there were cars that were burnt in town when the entire protest broke out. And my husband said, "No, it's fine. Can you please show us your search warrant? Do you have a search warrant?" And they said, "No, we don't have a search warrant, but this can't wait. This is urgent. We need to find evidence that he's the one who was there. And this evidence is in his room. We believe it's in his room." That's what they said. So we both refused. We said, "No, we can't. You can't gain access to Kanya's room. You need to understand that this is Kanya's home. It's not his house. So if you don't have a search warrant, you need to go and get one and come back." So they refused to leave. So my husband got on the phone, called his friend. His friend is a lawyer.
The family explained that hours later there was still no search warrant. Instead, more police arrived and allegedly got violent when Kanya's mother recorded what was unfolding.
They beat me up, big time, like I was on the floor, and they were kicking me. And my husband, Kanya, was standing right there and he was watching. And he was screaming. He was like, "Daddy, Daddy, they're going to kill Mom." And Daddy came out of the house running. As he came out around the corner, some of these policemen, I think about 5 of them, went to him and they punched him in the face. and he fell to the ground. I mean, I could see what was happening. I mean, I was on the floor, I was trying to protect myself. I could see him trying to come and rescue me from these guys, but anyway, so he couldn't, and then they got me up. They handcuffed me, and they said, "We are arresting you for obstruction of justice." This is the day that this must fall. Actually, this is the day that I experienced police brutality.
She and her son Kanya were taken to Hillbrow police station and detained. Days later, she was released, and after 6 months, her case was dropped. However, Kanya was charged with public violence and malicious damage to property. In this CCTV footage, a person is seen holding a bottle, moving towards the police vehicle. A little while later, we see flames. Later, he closes the door and runs away. Police believed that this person is Kanya. In December 2017, Kanya was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment, 3 of which were suspended.
We believed in the legal representation that Kanya had. We never thought that it was gonna be so harsh, the sentencing. And considering the fact that he's a first-time offender, he's never ever done anything that got him into trouble with law before, ever in his life. We just felt like 8 years is just ridiculous.
Kanya was being kept at Lyoko prison. During our time with his family, his absence was sorely felt. His room remained untouched, ready for when he came back home. There have been sustained campaigns for Kanya's release. Activists also questioned what they considered as his harsh sentence. A new legal team was appointed to review his matter.
There should be a measure of prospects of success, and there should be a consideration of prejudice. Of course, none of these considerations individually is decisive. They all constitute part and parcel of an overall assessment.
The team argued that Kanya's case was badly handled by his previous lawyer and that there were discrepancies between the charges against Cekeshe and what was in his statement. They turned to the High Court to challenge his conviction. This after the Johannesburg Central Magistrates Courts dismissed his application for leave to appeal the conviction. The Fees Must Fall movement was a call for free decolonized education. On some campuses, this included protests for Afrikaans to be scrapped as a language of teaching. This was also intertwined with protests for the outsourcing of university workers to stop. Amos Monageng, better known as Amla, was at the forefront of these protests at the University of Pretoria.
I told myself that coming to university, of course, I have to ensure that I reach my objectives, but at the same time, I should be the voice of those who are like me, who are coming from the poor families, who couldn't reach because of the poverty.
However, his activism is what led to the situation we found him in 2018. He was under house arrest.
I remember when I got arrested, it was after a night vigil that was very successful, that was, that had enough numbers to can continue with the struggle. In the morning of it, we were going to Princehof to go and raise consciousness to say that the movement is not dead, we are continuing. That's when I got arrested. Apparently there was a warrant of arrest, but it was never presented. We did not know about it. We believe that it was simply because of the role that I played within, the movement, within the organization, to say that if we get rid of him, perhaps it will demoralize the other, comrades.
His charges included public violence, the kidnapping of a bus driver, and assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm.
Even the students can attest that during any protest, there was no way that I can participate in beating the students because of my role was to marshal the students. My role was to negotiate whenever they're negotiating, to give the directives. There was no way that even at once I was involved in a fight.
For a year, he was in and out of court. There were many postponements with new evidence and witnesses constantly being brought forward. This led to a mini trial. Eventually, he entered into a plea bargain that resulted in his house arrest. At the time, he said he consoled himself by thinking of other activists during apartheid who were also subjected to house arrest. However, he did acknowledge that the turn of events had possibly put his future in jeopardy.
You know that many company policies, they don't want anyone with criminal record. And at the moment, I do have a criminal record. However, as an activist, I'm certain that, it is only white establishments that will reject us, and it is only white establishments that won't understand that I've secured a criminal record due to fighting for just cause. It was not out of deliberate crime.
Her outspokenness, social conscience, and family history of activism combined to inspire Yonela Ngaleka to join the Fees Must Fall movement. In 2018, when we met her, her attorney wanted to be present for the interview at her office. She explained that one day during the protests, they went to Braamfontein. They sang and blocked traffic.
I had moved stones and branches into the road as part of what we were doing as a collective. So at about 4 o'clock, I went home because I travel, so I cannot be on campus after 4 o'clock. I went home and I arrived at home at about past 6 to 7. When we switched on the news, it was live that the students had now burnt a police car and there had been updates on what has been happening, the situation on campus.
She was arrested the following day on campus.
They just came to me and then they pointed me talking to each other that, is she the one? I'm not sure, is she the one? And someone said, yeah, she's the one. And then they said, let's go. I asked, where are we going? They said, no, you'll find out there. So I thought this was a misunderstanding, that they would realize that they made a mistake. Hence, I didn't make a scene or fight about it. So I just followed them and we went to Hillbrook police station.
Yonela dismissed the initial charges as baseless. They included arson, assault, and malicious damage to property. They were eventually dropped except for one, public violence.
I don't stay on campus. When that police car was burnt or when that police guy was assaulted, I was already at home. So there was no way I could be there, part of the students who assaulted or burnt that police car. There has been a great impact because now I'm not studying due to funding, and last year I couldn't even write my exams in time because on the same day I had exams, I had to appear in court.
One Fees Must Fall activist's fight for justice went to the highest court in the land. It took the Concord to release student leader Bonginkosi Khanyile on 250 Rand bail in March 2017 after his arrest in September of the previous year on 8 charges. He was a student at the Durban University of Technology.
So when they sent me to prison, it was not only me, they were arresting actually those who are not arrested and also trying to arrest an ID. That you see, if you continue this thing, this is what is going to happen to you.
Our interview with Bonginkosi was a month before his trial began. He was hopeful he would not face imprisonment.
If I'm found guilty, they say there won't be any option of a fine. I'll serve less than 3 years, but not more than 15 years. So we can only hope that I'm found not guilty.
However, this was not the case. In January last year, the Fees Must Fall leader was finally sentenced to an effective 3 years house arrest, bringing an end to his case, which lasted over 2 years due to several postponements. Many fees must fall student activists believe theirs was a just struggle. More than a year later, we caught up with some of the activists from our initial episode. Amla is now a free man and no longer under strict sanctions.
The support base that I received from comrades, family, those who are close to me, I really appreciated it because, I mean, it's what kept me going. It's what kept me strong.
Amla had been a computer science student at the University of Pretoria, but as a result of his activism, he was expelled. He is now studying through UNISA.
Currently, I just finished the second year, hopefully. Second year, intending to, and obviously there are some of the third year modules that I've done this semester. So next year, hopefully if everything goes well, I should be finishing the degree.
His sentence ended in February last year, and he admits that he sometimes thinks about his peers whom he studied with and who are now ahead of him.
Obviously, the peers that I was with, they've progressed in life, you know. They've graduated, others they're engaged in their postgrad, others they're already working. I'm here stuck, you know, trying to figure my life out. However, one principle that I've always, you know, utilized is to say that every man runs their journey with their own pace, you know. We can start the race from the same point at the same time, but we're not going to finish at the same point at the same time.
He believes former President Jacob Zuma's promise that government would offer free higher education for poor and working class students has not materialized, and that this was political expediency given the pressure Zuma felt at the time.
What Zuma was doing, he was just grandstanding. And we're vindicated today on those claims. Why I'm saying that? Free education has never materialized. The fees continue to increase. The financial exclusion in institutions of higher learning is still order of the day. Students are continuing to commit suicide. Students are continuing to be academically excluded. And all this, you know, illness of the institutions of higher learning are emanating from one point, the fees.
Ironically, Bonginkosi Khanyile is now in the same position that Amla was.
You are not allowed to go in a public space. You are not allowed to leave your home unless you've asked for a permit. You can't take any intoxicating substances, any drug, any alcohol or anything else unless prescribed by a doctor. What else? You are not supposed to have more than one girlfriend. You ought to have one. You can't have two simultaneously. So it means even if I wanted to have polygamy, I cannot practice such.
Here at his aunt's house in Mlazi in Durban is where he spends his time.
I wake up in the morning, I do the house chores, I eat, I read. I watch the news, I listen to radio. Sometimes I go to school when I'm needed to go to school. Of course, and receive visitors. But as the house arrest continues, the visitors are getting fewer. People, they get tired of coming and visiting you. So it's a very lonely journey, my brother, and a frustrating one. You know, we used to read about house arrest. When you read about Abu Steve Big or Abu Robert Mangaliso Sobugu, Abu Mamwin, whenever I read that it's us who's going to travel the same journey under the so-called democratic dispensation. So we're suffering. It's very sad.
He says the sanctions pertaining to his house arrest have only recently been relaxed. However, whenever he thinks about how far he could be and the progress his peers have made, it's a bitter pill to swallow.
I'm bitter, my brother. Very angry. People are working now. They are supporting their families. We are here. We can't even move. Our lives are on pause. The very same government who said they've given us free education is the very same government that is in the forefront of persecuting us. We're in the forefront of the struggle. So it's the highest level of hypocrisy that is done by our leaders.
But he hasn't allowed this to kill his spirit. He is currently completing a master's degree.
I take education very, very serious, my brother. My mother never went to school. My father never went to school. So when I grew up, I always wanted to change that thing in my family. In fact, I was the first one in my family to go to school. So the question of education, to me, it is very serious. It's not only serious to me, but it's also serious even with the black youth. I always believe that for us to liberate ourselves, we need to be educated. So it doesn't mean because I'm under house arrest I must give up. I ought to stay positive. I ought to continue pursue my education because knowledge is power. Cannot run away from that fact. So we're going to push and study with the hope that one day things are going to be fine.
Despite these hardships, the students believe they changed the course of history. Yonela Ngaleka received a suspended sentence and had to attend an adult life skills program at NICRO for 4 months. She has since completed the course and will resume her studies this year. These students continued to make various pleas to government, asking for amnesty for Kanya Cekeshe. And on the 24th of December last year, Kanya was finally released from prison. He spent Christmas with his family.